Big, notable publishers or developers always have a series or massive game that the streets know them for, like Activision and its Three Stooges have Call of Duty, EA has had their sports games, Rockstar has Grand Theft Auto, stuff like that. But hidden deep within the neck rolls of those said top of the food chain companies or franchises, there are games a lot of average Alberts forget about or simply don't know they existed in the first place, and today I wanted to look at a few of them. For instance, if you take Bethesda, you'll know these lords for Skyrim, Skyrim Special Edition, Skyrim VR, Skyrim on the Switch, Skyrim Anniversary, maybe a Fallout 3, but probably Skyrim. You really don't have many souls out there saying, my Bethesda game is Brink. It was developed by Splash Damage and released the same year as Skyrim actually, in May of 2011. Being one of the few titles Bethesda has descended from their throne of Benjamins and put their name on that was attempting to etch its way into the multiplayer first-person shooter market, seeming to have an interesting premise right off the rip. The whole idea in a nutshell, or more importantly, the impression that was given off with all the marketing, was you're essentially going to be tearing it up on maps with Mirror's Edge styled gameplay, jumping around, shooting people, having an amphetamine up the wazoo, Adderall snorting, drug induced, cracked out, nutty time with it. Not only did this look interesting, but it stood out amongst all the other shooter games society was able to play at the time. People were getting Call of Duties or military shooters cupcaked right into their nose constantly, so having a game that stood out like a stiffy in basketball shorts was a free trip to Gumdrop Mountain. Players saw the adverts, believed them, and prepared their undergarments for some serious parkouring action. Then the game actually released. You start out forced to make one of the most difficult choices since the gender selection screen before birth: escape the Ark or save the Ark. I chose escape because I don't know why, it didn't really matter. At least you can make your own character. This hideous, rancid, vomit-inducing creature is what I started with. This pinnacle of human life is what I left with. Festivity maxing for Crimis, ready to decimate the depressing story mode we are given. Look, Brink was mainly a multiplayer game. It's one of those situations where you play the story against other real-life people in multiplayer modes and maps, or you could have them all on your team and you can test your mettle against bots as the Octo Squadron. Unfortunately, that did not age well. The story and world building through narrative was clearly an afterthought. I'm not gonna lie, I finished the entire thing for one team and I had no idea what was even happening or if there was a character I was supposed to care about. So the entertainment of Brink mainly relied on if you were playing with friends or against other snot-nosed brats that were trying to stop your fun. And in 2025, Brink is effectively dead, humanity would discover Atlantis, and Satan would give Jesus a handjob before you find a lobby. No matter the time of day I tried, it was not possible. No one is playing this game. Meaning, all I'm able to do is partake in bot-filled lobbies while playing the story, which isn't really fun, to be honest with you. The bot intelligence skill is not 10. I feel like I'm in a Call of Duty YouTuber lobby where my opponents are drinking their saliva from a sippy cup, kicking back in a Thomas the Choo Choo couch. I guess making this more of an opportunity to look at why Brink got in this face-down position in the first place. And the thing that stuck out to me after only playing mission number 1 is how these maps do not cater to the gameplay that was expected, not even remotely close to it. Practically all of them are choke-heavy with minimal flank routes, which is a counterintuitive design choice from what anyone thought they were going to be dealing with. As I said earlier, the adverts were making players believe they would be able to use movement to their utmost advantage, going through the trials and tribulations of putting Brink's physics engine into a front face lock, choking it out, jumping off walls, going crazy, styling on people, asserting dominance like you graduated from an alpha male boot camp. With all that, you'd figure you'd be playing on maps that are more diverse with plenty of flank angles, allowing players to have the agency of entering engagements how they want to, or even having pathways that would fit the presumed gameplay style of parkouring. This mentality does not exist in Brink whatsoever. All we really get for flank opportunities is climb up fence, staircase, straight path. Unless I'm trying to make a skate park out of this shit, give me a break with all that. The flanks you can go on are literally no different than something like Call of Duty, where you just run and slide your way there. After the first few missions were done, I genuinely forgot the parkouring and movement was supposed to be a thing. And speaking of parkouring, the extent of your parkour movement is simply being able to climb up ledges or on top of boxes, with the unreal passive ability that lets you automatically mantle over objects while sprinting. That's all you can do. That is, until you cut your dietary intake in half, unlocking the twink body type. Now you can wall jump and wall run. That are both impractical 99% of the time due to how the maps are designed, especially if you consider how you're expected to be playing against real-life players. While you're sitting there trying to attach Stuart Little-ass cars to your shoes and soap across the cement or bounce off walls, a person would just be staring at you, questioning what is going on behind the scenes with whoever is controlling your character, then just gun you down. And again, the maps hardly have any opportunities for you to do this stuff realistically, so the whole wall jumping and wall running is kinda pointless. Your only real benefit becoming this pencil-neck dork is being able to move faster at the expense of only having SMGs and pistols at your disposal, shifting the focus in a completely different direction from where players' expectations were before launch. The focus of Brink was 100% not in the movement or anything of the sort. It was all in the team shooter elements. You have 4 classes: Soldier, Engineer, Medic, and Operative, all having unique abilities and skills that you can unlock or switch between as you play, while also having unique functions on the map, even to the point of certain classes being required to finish some of the objectives, like needing to be a soldier to blow something up, or being an operative to hack into something. In addition to that, you have the aforementioned body sizes thing, attempting to add more diversity into gameplay. To repeat myself, we got the twink, having slightly less health, but moves faster and can jump off walls, but only has SMGs and pistols as weapons. Average, that is average, losing the ability to wall jump or wall run, but can use assault rifles. Then finally, we have Chunk, who cannot do any parkour at all, by the way. You move slower, have more health, and can now use LMGs. This body type inclusion is a very mind-rattling one. Why would you put a character or body type that cannot do any parkouring or climbing, period, in a game where people thought they'd be doing a bunch of jumping and climbing? The design philosophy from what you experience versus what was advertised heavily does not add up, making me feel like the whole idea of what they called smart movement was shoehorned in, attempting to make Brink stand out more to the kiddies. Like, if you look at this time capsule comment from 15 years ago, before Brink even released, on this video talking about their smart movement system, it says, "I can't believe what I am witnessing here. I am almost speechless. How can you move like that in a game with other players swinging all over is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like I said in the other, more recent gameplay, wow, I'm sold." Also, I just want to say to the developers, congratulations guys. I don't know how this can't be fun. LOL. Peace. And then there was this comment too. Players were actually excited about this movement stuff, and it was heavily marketed by Bethesda, saying how it's gonna change the way you think about going around the map and taking on engagements, using movement to your advantage, when it's mainly just climbing on a fucking wall or auto-mantling over a railing. There's only one minuscule maggot of an addition to the movement that is kinda unique, where if you slide into an enemy, you knock them on their ass. Other than that, this is no more advanced than any other shooter game you could play at the time, leaving you with only those team shooter shenanigans for entertainment. And let's say for a second, you're happy with that. You're perfectly fine with being misled. You enjoy the sickening, disgusting abominations birthed from interdimensional creatures from another era of life characters we are given, and you just want to play Brink for what it is. It's still going to be a lackluster experience, mainly due to how the gunplay is not good, your overall handling is stiff and clunky. When you aim down, there is no accuracy increase to your weapon at all, I didn't realize that for a while, actually. I was assuming I was being benefited. No, I was just being ran through a cryptocurrency classic of getting rug pulled the whole time. Then, I have to say it again, if you consider how all of the maps are so formulaic and linear with minimal ways to approach any situation, you are forced to play Brink like you would with any other shooter, making the subpar gunplay an even bigger issue. The only real positive of this game is being able to swap class abilities to try out different things. It's not to say there was no potential with Brink, because there definitely was. Even now, Mirror's Edge X first-person shooter multiplayer game is a captivating idea. Sadly, Brink didn't live up to what people thought it would be and was not designed in a proper way to accommodate the advertised gameplay. I really wish there was more to this Brink saga, but there isn't. It's just a dilapidated, withered husk of a game that you can download for free on Steam if you want, which makes it even more stunting I couldn't find a single human being to play this game with. But what stunned me more than that, like Liu Kang, fly kick in the jaw, dental appointment, levels of shock, was when I found out Castlevania has a fighting game. One of the old timers in the industry, loads of internet users were a little semen, a little egg when Castlevania hit the scene, starting in the 2D space, eventually making its way over to 3D. It has a TV show. People are always talking about that stuff. We know all those shits. I'm just never seeing the words Castlevania Judgment leaving anyone's fingertips when referring to this series. It was a Wii exclusive 3D fighter that released in 2008, and this is the only fighting game in the entire franchise. Is there a reason for that? Probably, but I don't fully think it has to do with the quality of Judgment for why that is. Konami did hit the notes here, adding a lot of the recognizable characters. We got Alucard, Trevor, Maria, Eric Lacarde, Sypha and friends. You can unlock Death and Dracula, with the big dog of this game being the new character named Eon. Whenever you start a story mode, he is always the first opponent, where you find out he pulled all of these characters from their respective timelines, sticking them all into a rift, attempting to find a person that is powerful enough to take on the Timekeeper. And to prove you can do it, you need to bust his teeth out with a mag light or whatever weapon you are holding. In Alucard's case, it's a sword. And this Monopoly Moneybags motherfucker cannot stop a guy whose name is Dracula spelled backwards. He lost to my number 2 button spam power, no issues at all, as did everyone else on the ladder. Castlevania Judgment is a very button spammy fighting game. The most effective attack with practically every character is just pressing 2 repeatedly or mixing in a power move here and there. To be fair though, that is expected. You're playing this on a Wiimote, you don't have many buttons to work with, unless you made players swing that bitch around, spinning their arm in a helicopter propeller formation to pull an attack off, which is unrealistic. Motion controlled fighters are not the move. And come to think of it, you don't use any motion controls at all here, not even in the menus. So it's curious why this was even released as a Wii exclusive. Who knows? All I can say, disregarding the simple mouth breather gameplay loop, there's still a slight charm using these characters in a fighting environment. There are probably fan fictions out there pitting these characters against each other, so why not make it become a reality for one night only? It's nice seeing some of their special moves. You have a Gunnar bait character tossed in that is probably responsible for ungodly actions priests, ministers, and grandmas everywhere refuse to acknowledge. Using Dracula is fun. He's a broken-ass, overpowered fucking mess of a character, summoning AC-130 rods from his fingertips. Trevor's got his little patchy pirate-ass getup going on, spanking his opponents with his whip. Death is built like a bionicle, twirling his scythe around like a majorette. Even though the fighting is very straightforward and mindless, it's also somewhat entertaining because of this stuff. And they did try to keep the Castlevania essence in there with more than just characters. On the stages, you're able to pick up sub-weapons like crosses or potions to create combos with, adding more depth to matches. I'm sure it would be annoying to go against online if you saw some dude doing strings, hitting the 10-hit combo. That Wiimote's getting spiked right into the floor, no questions asked. The other and more enticing Castlevania-y play stuck in is when you go partway through the ladder with each fighter, there's a stage you need to go against little zombies or mermen, feeling like a Walmart Castlevania battle that is a Castlevania battle. Then after killing them all, a giant minotaur comes out to add more gasoline to the bicycle critical. With those additions, I honestly feel like Judgment has a perfect blend to make a player that couldn't give a rat's ass about a fighting game want to try it if they enjoyed Castlevania enough. I went through the game with each character to see what enthralling story development would occur. Whenever you finish a story mode, you're shown Eon's pocket watch, getting a soul crystal on the side, simply telling you to finish the game with every character. And once you perform that impossible task, you get told, the door to your true foe is open, complete the tales of your favorite characters in story mode, and return them to their respective eras, forcing you to finish the game with everyone again, which, to be honest, can kiss my ass. I get flu-like symptoms whenever games require you to do everything you just did all over again for the true ending. The only actual difference per playthrough is that the ladder is slightly longer, and your final boss is changed to the Timekeeper. The guy isn't too difficult. He has a bunch of telegraphed moves you need to learn how to avoid, and you keep hitting him when you have the opportunity. It's essentially Wispy Woods remastered. Upon burning him to a crisp, you get your true ending. That is a joke, to be frank. All you see is a portal background with plain white text in front of it telling you something that happens. It's seriously game mill type shit. Real talk, if you want to boil down the Castlevania Judgment hot dog, it reminded me a lot of playing Soul Calibur, although Soul Calibur is much better in basically every way. Still, you can genuinely have a solid time with Judgment, especially if you play the castle mode that mainly focuses on going against typical monsters and finishing challenges. With a quest to reach Dracula bitch ass, you need to do stuff like pulling off certain combos, knocking people out of the ring, activating stage hazards, and other goofy monkey brain tasks they dish out to you. Then of course, there's a couple boss fights stuck into the trenches as well, and whenever you send them into the concrete mixer, you unlock a top hat and glasses for Alucard. Nothing is better than Dapper Card. Aside from a Sonic fighting game, that is obviously what the world has not only wanted, but needed. I don't know why this exists. I'm guessing it's purely due to how popular Sonic the Hedgehog was and still is. People who grew up when Sonic 2 released knows exactly what Sonic did to them kids. It's not very often when one single game makes people want to buy a console, but this little bastard did just that. 1992 was his year, then after that, the ritual became eat, sleep, drink, relieve yourself to Sonic, day in, day out. And with all that testosterone floating about, Sonic absorbed it all to create Sonic the Fighters so he can hospitalize his friends. This was a 3D arcade fighter that released in 1996, giving us a roster of a few characters you may or may not know. I've never heard of this polar bear before. I know, crucify me, because I'm not up to snuff with every furry friend stuck into the Sonic verse. I ended up giving him a whirl anyways, and oddly, Sonic the Fighters is just like Castlevania Judgment with how it's a very button-mashy game. There's obviously hard-hitting attacks and combos you can pull off if you truly want to go under the hood, and instead of traditional blocking, you have a barrier with limited use for the entire fight. Once it breaks, it's gone until a rematch or if you win, which is a pretty unique mechanic, honestly. But rather than spending my time figuring out how Bark the polar bear performs in battle, truly learning what is going on around me, transmogging myself into melted butter on toast, I was a lot more fascinated with how this is an actual game. Maybe it shouldn't be too shocking since Sonic has stuck his nasty fingers into other genres like Sonic Spinball. I just never hear about this game when anyone is talking about the Big K Nux or our favorite chili dog enjoyer, even when referring to older arcade fighters. Could it be a quality thing? Sonic the Fighters is undoubtedly a step down from your Mortal Kombats, Street Fighters, and Virtua Fighters. It's more of a time killer that isn't as sickening as I thought it would be with difficulty. We are playing an arcade game here, so I'm always prepping myself for the AI to be in overdrive, Dorian in the Imperial City snagging infinite gold pieces out of my pocket when my heart attempts making the mistake of beating. But no, surprisingly, there was only 2 moments where I wanted to shut the game off. Fittingly, the first was against Sonic, then second was Metal Sonic, who is your vanilla panhandler quarter siphoning boss battle. There isn't too much else to add aside from all this. You're just playing a lesser known to the masses entry in the Sonic lineage. The game only got re-released twice, once on Sonic Gems collection for PS2 that has other classics like Sonic R included, then the second was in 2012 on 360's and PS3's digital marketplaces. Which could also be the reasoning for why Sonic the Fighters isn't in the normie sphere. Whatever the reasoning is though, I do hope one day we can get a sequel, putting Sonic.exe in there so he can rip someone's heart out through their urethra, or pull off one of the various creepypasta special moves, call in fucking Sonichu, SpongeBob.exe, and have a field day. Or would that fly under the radar too? It's possible. No matter how popular a series can be, there's always a chance players end up forgetting about at least one game in the franchise. Even Crash Bandicoot has had that happen. Our little orange two-legged rat that loves his apples, PlayStation's family-friendly mascot, entered the gaming space, 1996. Conveniently, while Sonic was pummeling his cronies, Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation comes. Nothing but destruction, topped the charts. Crash then ascended the corporate ladder, becoming more and more popular by the minute, eventually concocting an idea to one-up Mario Kart, accomplished his task no problem. Crash Team Racing, 1999, one of the greatest kart racers of all time. 2003 whips around, Crash Nitro Kart came, that for some reason is talked about less than Team Racing in the general populace. Still, it's a great game. I think it's better than the first. And for a lot of people, that's where the Crash Racing series stops. These two games, and that's it. Little do they know, there was like 2,000 Crash Racing games that kept releasing on phones that I was debating on putting here, but decided against it, because the third and final Crash Racing game that released on consoles is far more interesting, and of course lots of people forgot about it. It's called Crash Tag Team Racing, a game that decided to deviate from what the spin-off series established with the two titles that came before it. Introducing some new characters to the mix, like Willy Wumpa-Cheeks here, not entirely sure what radioactive barrels he was playing around in as a child, having a faucet for a nose. We got Ebenezer Von Clutch, straight out of a Green Giant can, but more importantly than those new creatures plopped into the Crash Bible, Tag Team Racing wanted to mix in adventure-styled gameplay like the normal entries, while also keeping it in the realm of racing, which was unexpected to say the least. The hub takes place in a theme park with 5 worlds where you can run around, finding crystals, get Wumpa coins before they became a microtransaction, buy outfits for characters from employees, acquire side quests from other playable characters to unlock new cars, and even interact with park guests. I don't know why it's so surreal seeing this. Crash interacting with normal human beings, and no, I don't count Cortex. If this right here is human, with the 8 oversized teeth, head looking like it's gonna fly off a runway, plain ass hairdo, coming off smoking a bowl, inking the letter N on his forehead, eyebrows that you can stick potted plants on, if this is human, I don't want to be one anymore. But adding more to the surrealism for Tag Team Racing, you're also able to play little carnival mini-games, like shooting monkeys that are falling from the heavens, murdering ducks, going bowling. They really went off the deep end when coming up with ideas for this one. Surely most players who bought this game thought it was only gonna be racing. Of course, them adding all the extra stuff to do isn't a bad thing. Who wouldn't want to see Crash Bandicoot pulling out the strap, gunning down other animals, becoming a war veteran, or tossing heaters down the bowling alley? As long as the racing gameplay is up to the standards that have been set by the 2 games that released before it. You know, because racing is in the title. And unfortunately, that's where Tag Team Racing's body odor is resonating from. Rather than the gameplay being like how it was with Nitro Kart or Team Racing, they changed how it all functions. Mainly with how you're now able to merge with other racers on the track, which is really strange if you think about it. These hooligans are your enemy, then if you merge with one, now that person is your ally, and if you win, both racers get first. This system is also very exploitable, allowing you to cheese victories by merging with an opponent shortly before the finish line for that oh so glorious you are winner moment. The fabled merging technique also gives you the benefit of using military grade weaponry that is unique to each character, and these said weapons almost insta-kill, or some do insta-kill anyone you hit. However, if you don't want to murder anyone yourself, you can switch over to the driver's seat, letting the AI use their aimbot to pulverize society while you watch, tearing up asphalt to the finish line. This stuff right here is the biggest and most notable change to the racing formula, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it on paper. The problem is how the core racing was dumbed down heavily. For some reason, they changed how turbo drifting works. You can't chain boosts together like you could previously flying around the track. In tag team racing, you build up a turbo meter that increases depending on how long your drift was, then you activate it, significantly downgrading the overall satisfaction compared to the last two entries. I'm assuming this change was due to the merging mechanic, which could be the case. But honestly, the more I think about it, why can we not just pick two characters by default if the entire gameplay was designed or balanced around having two characters in the same car? Maybe they were scared of critics calling them out, saying they're trying to rip off Mario Kart Double Dash. I don't know. It's obvious that's the game they looked at to get the idea for tag team racing in the first place. So they might as well have had a dick measuring contest, seeing who would win in the bathroom urinal sword fight. That's how the spin-off series started to begin with. Crash Team Racing did it 6 years prior and won by a few inches. The decision making here is very bizarre, and they created a racing experience that is quite shallow since the core racing itself doesn't have much depth. And 9 times out of 10, races are you finding a character to mix pixels with to blow everyone else up. And I'm assuming the shallow nature is the reason for the sheer quantity of content included. Similar to the overworld having various things to do in it, that can also be said with the races as well. Each track has 5 objectives to finish if you want to 100% the game. We have racing, which if you weren't aware, you need to do 3 laps and finish first place. An unheard of concept, I know. You can play Rolling Thunder, a mode that is terrorism against local life in Crash's universe, slaughtering as many racers as possible in 1 lap. Run and Gun has you shoot targets. Crashinator has you break a bunch of objects in a single lap. And Fast Lap is Fast Lap. Just fucking win. I was grinding tag team racing for a while, going through the worlds, and I feel like this game is a prime example of quantity over quality. It's genuinely like YouTube content sludge, shitting out content for the sake of making content rather than putting any thought or passion into anything. A 2025 trademark back in '05. Sure, there are a lot of modes to play on paper, but do they really need to be here? Is sitting on a turret shooting targets a genuine fun addition? Is sitting on a turret shooting other racers that don't shoot back at you an actual fun addition? Does anyone want to go through a race crashing into pieces of wood? Or are these things included to pad out game time, attempting to make the player ignore the core racing gameplay is lackluster at best? It's not to say all the content is worthless chicken grease. The most fun I had playing tag team racing was actually with the battle mode, going against enemies that actually shoot back at you, and also watching your AI driver have a very odd mentality, thinking they're going to break out in hives, walking around sniffling from an allergy attack if they simply touch a weapon pickup. For whatever reason, they don't want to grab them, so getting other weapons is almost a no-go, forcing you to stick with the Chester cheese puffs, unless you decide to take the wheel yourself and continuously drive your teammate off a cliff until the match is over for messing up your gaming time. If you could play this mode with other people, I reckon it'd be a good time, as some sort of Christmas game, peppermint schnapps squirted right into the eyeball of the person who loses, eggnog spiked with Clorox for the winner. It's entertainment for everybody. For the most part though, a lot of the content in tag team racing really isn't fun to do, and most importantly, the racing isn't that enjoyable either. The battle mode is the only place where real eroticism comes from. Regardless, it does deserve at least some credit trying something new for the Crash racing world. As we know, not all experiments are going to work. We've all seen Mortal Kombat Special Forces, we've all seen Mortal Kombat Mythologies, junk, garbage, abysmal, fucking worthless video games. Fighters trying to do spin-offs usually doesn't end very well. Mortal Kombat is the most notable for it, thanks to the aforementioned titles, but Tekken is always forgotten about with these plays, probably cause there's only one, Death by Degrees, starring Nina, one of the original Tekken characters. She's been around for eons, starting off with her Roblox build in the blocky-ass game era. Girl is an assassin, a tough cookie, if you will, who has a pretty interesting backstory if you really delve into it. For the sake of Death by Degrees, though, all you need to know is that she's a Prestige Master level 1000 trained assassin. To my understanding, this game is not canon, so if you play it, you just have to enjoy it for what it is and leave it at that. It released in 2005, having a fucking Charlie's Angels GameCube introduction with Nina fighting in a bikini, where you immediately discover Death by Degrees is one of those games that has you do all of your combat actions with the right analog stick by jerking it in the direction of your enemy. That being both attacking and blocking, it takes some time getting used to. I was seriously expecting this to play a lot like Tekken Force from Tekken 4, because that could actually work if it's done well, and would have undoubtedly been better than what we have here. Yes, they did include a move list of attacks that you can unlock as you play that are oddly difficult to pull off, not always working when you do the inputs. You're also able to muster the power of channeling Mortal Kombat 9 X-ray attacks before Mortal Kombat 9 was thought of by targeting people's bones and crunching them up into itty-bitty fragments. Unfortunately, even with these cake layers they attempted dropping in here, you end up spending 99.34% of your time stroking your analog stick to the position of your enemies, repeating the same basic combo string, disregarding what's found on the move list completely. After a short time, scuffles against enemies become a 2-month-old bag of Doritos, little rubbery-ass tortilla chip. It's not to say the fighting isn't manageable and sticking bamboo splints under your fingernails would be a more electrifying time. I just feel if the other combo attacks weren't so awkward to pull off, combat would be far more engaging. Thankfully, weapons are tossed into the mix to break up the monotony somewhat. We can whoop a guy's titty with tonfas, use a katana that cannot penetrate skin, and you're able to pull out the gun when you finally had enough, helping all the crew members finally discover what happens after death. These pieces add a bit more fun than there otherwise would be, and also makes cleaning up the trash in these hallways a lot easier. With that said, there does exist an ethereal being of an enemy on this boat that your thickness or weaponry cannot kill, regardless of the plays or moves you try to make, and that's the camera. Death by Degrees has a fixed camera system that you're not able to control unless you hold R2 to activate the cellulite cam, that is only useful when you're going down straight hallways or in very specific situations. Other than niche scenarios, you're forced to go against the camera while trying to move through areas, or worst of all, during combat. Nothing is more exciting than having a war against an army of mentally stunted stumps wanting to bring you to an early grave. You try battling back, the camera angle switches, and your attack goes in a completely different direction than where you were aiming the stick drag. However, if you can deal with it, finding a portal to another dimension where you'd be able to sit your ass down, looking past the repetitive combat loop and rotten camera angles, amongst the mold and other fungi growth, you do have yourself a half-decent game here, thanks to the stuff that isn't related to fighting. Death by Degrees has a lot of Resident Evil feel-and-ass survival horror adjacent features included, like a limited amount of items and weapons to find, adding to the importance of them, exploring rooms, backtracking, looking around, solving puzzles to open weapon storage containers, maximizing healing items, and saving certain weapons for hairy situations changes how difficult your playthrough is going to be. Death by Degrees genuinely got hard at certain points, and if I didn't have the proper healing items, this bitch would be sleeping with the devil's hole pup fishes at the bottom of whatever make-pretend ocean we're in the middle of. And this is one of those situations where if you die, you return back to your last save point that are few and far between. Or maybe it feels like they're few and far between, thanks to this being a game that has a lot of downtime while you attempt figuring out where you're supposed to go. No joke, I had a few moments where I was wandering around for 15 minutes, sifting through the ancient chambers, trying to find the location I'm supposed to be in, or the computer I'm required to activate. Parts of this game feels like trying to play Resident Evil 1 for the first time, blind, no help. Early on in my playthrough, I was getting pissed. I was running around the corridors of this boat for, I want to say, 40 years, trying to find where I needed to go, until I accidentally stumbled into the first boss fight against a character named Bryce. We fight this Pink Panther goofball in a freezer. He runs around hiding behind frozen cow carcasses, so I put those pieces of meat on my feet and gave him a beef cold cut sandwich. He cried like the adolescent-minded twerp he is after taking the beating. He started running away from me, so I chased him down. Then you fight him in this makeshift gladiatorial arena with a bunch of blades sticking out of the wall, expecting you to knock his bitch ass into them with combo attacks. These boss fights are honestly fun. You don't have many, but they tried to make them at least somewhat interesting. The most enjoyable to me was probably the one against Lana Lay. After we see Nina do one of the most obnoxious throws of all time by gorilla charging straight into Lana and her henchmen, Nina gets shot by a hallucinogenic needle. We then enter a dream of some kind with a young Nina seeing dead soldiers. They turn into zombies, and you need to protect the child Nina from those said zombies while dealing with the boss. All this stuff are good pieces to the game. The survival and explorative elements, the unlockable Ana mode is a great addition that also changes the final boss fight for the main game to Heihachi if you finish it completely. There's secret costumes to unlock. Although the story is not canon, it's not terrible by any means. You have a genuine foundation to making a solid game here. The thing that holds Death by Degrees back is the core fighting. If this had a normal Tekken fighting system, or at least one that had genuine variety to it, I think this game could have been remembered a lot more fondly than it is, if people even remember it in the first place. The ones who do remember it, though, seem to not like it very much, with the fighting being the most prevalent reason as to why, alongside the camera angles and also the soundtrack, which is pretty rancid, considering how this is a game with the Tekken name on it, a series that has produced audible, Michael Shane vomited up gemstones from another dimension relentlessly. The soundtrack for Death by Degrees is the embodiment of not showering for 2 weeks. Even then, I do believe Death by Degrees really is worth a try if you can look past the things that hold it back. It's one of those games that is so close to being a decent title if it was fixed up a bit. I'd really love to see something similar tested again in the Tekken space. It's doubtful, of course. We'd have a better chance of the community not being professional victims saying the character they main is terrible at any moment they can. Or better yet, having From Software dive into the dark depths of their library to bring back one of their most obscure, overlooked, and forgotten titles, like Shadow Tower. FromSoft is obviously known for birthing their own subgenre of action RPGs at this point, but in the 90s, Armored Core was their big hoss. That's the game where people started putting adult video objects with From Software written on them into various orifices of their bodies. Then Kingsfield was their other franchise, also being FromSoft's launch into the industry, that was pretty popular. It was hanging in the background of Armored Core to a lot of players. But even with this early success, FromSoft apparently wanted to toss yet another bone in there. Shadow Tower released in 1998, where not a lot of people seemed to give a damn or even know it existed. It's one of those games you'd randomly grab off a store shelf because you see malnourished man wearing some sort of esoteric face wrapping, sitting crisscross applesauce, assuming that equals fun time. And if you decided to bring it home, turning it on, rather than having an elaborate story build-up, Shadow Tower has the most vanilla story any game could ever have. Simply put, it's Village. Village then gets a wedgie by darkness coming from a nearby tower. Unnamed young warrior is ready to go against said darkness. He enters Shadow Tower. That's it. You couldn't even give the guy a name. It's just young warrior. I guess we'll call him Alfonso. After our short introduction comes to a close, you spawn inside of the tower that is not your typical tower because it goes down. Like, what would normally be the top of the tower is the bottom. And before I could even start exploring this architectural beast, I accidentally killed myself by pressing the wrong button, reawakening my brain to the controls. Shadow Tower's movement sort of feels like you're trying to do a 3-point turn inside of a town park without hitting any pieces of equipment or children playing on them. L1 and R1 strafes, L2 and R2 looks up and down, then triangle is your attack button running on a stamina bar that you need to wait for a refill on before trying to attack again. You need to play very methodically, waiting for a monster to go for an attack, then you respond when you have the opportunity. All of the creatures are telegraphed with what they do, so it's not too difficult trying to run their pockets if everything goes according to plan. Your only problem is finding your way around handling the control scheme and occasional janky hit detection while not getting hit yourself. At least in most situations, when you have shit like this going on with two skeletons appearing in a little ass hallway to where you might as well be sticking your hand in a garbage disposal trying to battle them, there isn't much you can do about it. Cheap hogwash like this does happen throughout Shadow Tower. When we talk about the bosses a bit later, you'll see what I mean. But for now, as you get used to the controls, going to new areas, you'll realize everywhere you enter, aside from the very first area and the Shadow Tower, are masked in darkness, building an eerie atmosphere, if I say so myself, especially when you factor in how there is no music at all. This shit works for a dungeon crawler game. Going around in almost silence with your footsteps being the only noise, then suddenly hearing enemies in other rooms, or even in the same room as you, but you can't see them, helps keep the player on their toes. Also, making torches, lamps, and bottles of light valuable items to use while you're looking around, skirting your ass on the wall, pressing the X button 500 times trying to find secret rooms, lining your character's Ninja Turtle backpack with plenty of items, adding new weapons to your arsenal, viewing some grotesque imagery like finding a dead person in a wall, a dead person on a bed that stiffed a local Italian pizza shop, or even reading ominous text that attempts intimidating Alfonso. Comrades who failed in your quest, sleep quietly now in your sealed foundation. I'd love to know what kind of AI software Alfonso has in his brain to translate the 4-year-old Crayola scratch on the wall here, but sure. Agony, enmity, and despair. These are my pleasures. I need new playthings. How welcoming it is to see that in a torture chamber. I can't even lie, for the PS1 era, the atmosphere is good, and they do everything they can to make you feel like an insignificant little pissant to churn the butter even more. Probably the most frustrating part of Shadow Tower is the durability of everything. Armor, weapons, magic rings. They break over time, and it's something you really need to pay attention to. There's no unarmed attack, so if all your weapons break, you're fucked, basically. So you are required to savor as many Dorado's Ashes items as you can to replenish durability, or learn where all of the repair shops are that do function in a kinda unique way. Instead of having a primary currency of some kind, like gold or shekels, it's all trading. You can trade your blood for equipment durability, or you can trade equipment for healing potions and magic potions. And then there's one final shop that has you trade something called Cunes to get items. So with that in mind, it appears FromSoft tried to make Shadow Tower have some sort of survival-ish feel to it, especially when you consider how much RNG is involved in this game. A playthrough of Shadow Tower will never be 100% the same. Monsters do have varied drop pools. Like, you can have a playthrough where you feel like fucking Big Rump cranking out gold, getting weapon after weapon from everything you touch, or you could have a playthrough where you don't get anything, sitting there begging and groveling for a single crumb or morsel of wheat. Thankfully, there are a few guaranteed weapon spawns if you know where they are. Still, the weapon drops you get largely affects how challenging your playthrough will be, and how much you need to Hawkeye your equipment's durability, adding to the atmosphere even more. Not only that, FromSoft takes it a step further to where the amount of enemies that spawn isn't even consistent either. Enemy spawns are completely random. You may think you've killed everything, but you can stomp your way back to an area you just came from, and something might be waiting to give you a cyanide tablet on a silver platter, making it worthwhile to backtrack through completed rooms. And with all this talk about tussling against enemies, survival type elements, the darkness, the atmosphere, it makes you wonder, what about the story in-game? Sure, the lead up was bland, but with all this aesthetic power, Shadow Tower's narrative must be one of the greatest stories a game could ever have. Well, it hardly exists. Your goal throughout the entire game is to kill the Shadow Tower's 6 lords, one for each world, aside from Human World that doesn't have a lord, I guess making Alfonso the lord. We have Earth World, Fire World, Water World, Illusion World, Monster World, and Death World, all containing loads of different creatures and unique locations between each other. Nothing informs you of this initially, and the only way you learn any of it is by going out of your way finding the Fat Mole. One of the few friendly characters who appears throughout the game. Whenever you run into him, you get pieces of advice, possibly giving you a tidbit for what's going on, or maybe you'll see him having a psychotic episode.
Oh, you're not finished yet? Oh, hurry up and kill them all.
Aside from him, there's hardly anything that ever gives you a lick to what is going on around you, who the lords are, or what is happening. I don't know who the fuck Disguise is. She's a main boss. Nothing tells me who she is. This girl could be having a little birthday party with her strange-looking friends for all I know, swallowing that imaginary Johnson whenever she attacks. Who is Necron? He's dead. That's who he is. The best example for nonsense with Shadow Tower's story has to be King Edward. This supposed king is the only character that is brought up by name multiple times. If you read little scriptures on the wall, occasionally they'll mention Eddie, and when you kill the Dread Knight, the Lord of Earthworld, he tells you he was one of Ed's men and they left him for dead. So you'd assume King Edward must be an important character to what is happening in the universe. And towards the end of the game, you can have an encounter with Big E. Upon opening these giant-ass doors, he tells you no one is allowed to touch his throne. He stands up, and if you see him take one step, it's no wonder why the guy is dead. He can barely walk. You think this bitch is gonna win a fight against someone like Alfonso, who's slicing up the whole tower, one-man army noob tube? Well, Edward can actually, because he's hacking. No matter how many times you hit him, Edison does not die. So what you need to do here is grab a key on the floor, leave his chamber, go to a hallway with ghostly ass Robin Hoods trying to stop you from reaching their treasure, and that said treasure is a massive beating heart on the wall. How the fuck Edmeister ended up in a position where his life force became a heart that is larger than his entire body is a question I'd love an answer to. Obviously, Alfonso kills it, then Edward is dead. When you return to his chamber, he's just gone. No reasoning to who he is, what he is, or what clown show you stumbled into. You get nothing. With how much you see writing on walls or having mention of Edward through a main boss fight, you'd assume he's gonna be the final boss, or at least a character with an elaborate setup of some kind. Nope, it's an optional battle, and I use that word loosely. This tactic seems to be the only way storytelling elements are expressed, just an optional objective. I'd say the most in-depth one is for a character named Ariel. When you explore Earthworld's rotting cavern enough, you'll stumble into this dwarf who will give you a key, then phase through a wall afterwards. You use that said key to open a door in the area, talk to this girl that's made out of Slim Jims. She'll tell you a snot-nosed bitch-made demon named Durin trapped her soul inside of this teriyaki stick your eyes are blessed with looking at. Then, when you eventually enter the Earthworld's poisonous cavern, you'll stumble into a pathway filled with poison. A guy who looks like he's struggling if he wants to become an airplane pilot or a chef when he grows up comes out and says, "That area is filled with poison. Don't go that way. Come with me." So you follow him to discover that Coke-bottled glasses geek locked his door behind him to mess with you, making your only way to progress going through the forbidden hallway. So you inject a vaccine, do a mean backstroke, Michael Phelps your way through that shit, you reach Little Shop of Horrors, Alfonso chops down any bit of life in that area, including the evil man, who you discover is Durin. After all that, you find a girl locked in some sort of glass coffin in one of the rooms, open it with the key Durin dropped. Now Ariel is brought into the living world once again, and her sentient teriyaki chapter of life has come to a close. She can now be found in various areas throughout the game upon completing this, and is also an optional boss fight if you hit her. Ariel is on par with the final boss in difficulty. She can one-hit kill you when you have like 6,000 health. She doesn't drop anything though, so fighting her is pointless unless you're fully trying to assert your dominance. And of course, none of this pertains to Shadow Tower's overall narrative whatsoever. It's just a side objective. If you don't want to do these and you could care less about exploration, you can trudge your way straight to the boss of each world without learning a single thing about the game. I guess making Shadow Tower more of a gameplay-driven title, which isn't a bad thing. Shadow Tower, as I said, has the atmosphere and is pretty strong overall if you can harness the bits of jank when dealing with the movement and combat. Which does raise the question, how hard is Shadow Tower? This is a FromSoft game, difficulty has been their claim to fame, and when researching online, there are people out there who say Shadow Tower is hard. I found a little graph of people voting that sadly only had 76 votes, but a majority of them said it's either tough or unforgiving. And I just don't see it. Shadow Tower is so exploitable, I have a hard time believing anyone would say it's a serious nut-buster video game that will have you frothing at the mouth, going into a rabies-induced coma. The only moments you will die in Shadow Tower is from being one-shotted or by watching awful design in play-by-play scenarios. A perfect example is the boss of Death World, Hollow Mage. When you enter Gate of the Death, yes, that's what it's called, and waltz your way up to his oversized checkerboard, Hollow Mage runs his mouth acting like a grade school bully, threatening you to a one-on-one. He'll then spam one single attack for the entire fight, creating an aura around him, requiring you to walk through it to get one hit off and back away. This attack rips through your health bar, doing 300 to 400 damage a second, forcing you to use a healing potion after 1 or 2 hits. On top of you needing to deal with him teleporting all over the place, you can't see where he's going thanks to torches or bottles of light not working in Death World, and you aren't able to use magic against him since he is resistant to it. The whole battle is an atrocity, but if you have a bow and an item called Evil Eye that makes enemies not able to teleport for a short time, he literally cannot damage you anymore. You can stand there shooting arrows at him, dead. No chance in hell. A similar situation happens earlier on in the game with Magi Magus, the boss of Waterworld. You got Franklin shooting ice balls at you, headbanging, the boss is blaring his obnoxious attack, you can't go near him. Initially, it looks like a debilitating disease in video game form, but if you pull out a bow, dead no problem. Having a bow straight up wins you the game. Every boss, every monster will submit to Alfonso. Best of all, it's a weapon that has a guaranteed drop from an imp in Earthworld, so you can get one every playthrough. And if for whatever reason you don't want to use a bow, there are plenty of magic spells that shoot out multiple projectiles, allowing you to deal massive damage to enemies that aren't resistant to it. Plus, if your enemy is weak, you'll stun lock them. Any situation that you would believe to be hairy, you can exploit it with either one of those attacks. The difficulty can go from, I don't know what to do, how is anyone supposed to win, to enemy no damage you no more, me always win. Of course, the bows and magic rings have durability you need to work around, but assuming you can keep on top of it, you can make Shadow Tower tap out with 0 skill whatsoever. Even the final boss. Once you kill all 6 lords, you enter the very bottom of the tower, the void, you open that mouth, enter it. Balron, a character that was never mentioned a single time throughout the game, is in his endless hallway with a Sistine Chapel-ass roof. I stand there, grrr. All he does is shoot electro staffs at me that are brain dead to avoid by strafing left and right. After a short abuse session, he turns into Reptile from Mortal Kombat for Phase 2. The swiveling artillery activates once more. He dies. Oh no, Balron was the booger monster all along that references the mole for some reason.
And that bothersome rodent.
Unsurprisingly, the runaway bacteria from science class is dead in 6 to 7 arrows. And if you're curious what happens after defeating the ultimate evil, you become the Shadow Tower guy. You are now the king. This is the only realistic ending, honestly. If his ass is slaughtering an entire underground civilization by himself, the guy deserves it at that point. Alfonso is the definition of beast mode, knockout Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. But I gotta say, even with the exploitability, occasional poorly designed boss fights, and lack of story, Shadow Tower does have a serious enjoyment factor to it. If you are a fan of heavy atmospheric games, the uniqueness each world has to offer is honestly enough to make this a good time. The monsters aesthetically are well done too, and they have a creature book to go along with them, giving additional details like how much health they have or what they're weak to. But if you're looking for a serious, rich, oozing narrative, that's not gonna happen. Or maybe it does if you look at the nooks and crannies of the versus mode. Yes, Shadow Tower actually has a little PvP mode where you can play as various monsters and battle each other, letting you gamble weapons from save file to save file. I have no idea why this is a thing. FromSoft must have stuck it in here out of boredom. In all seriousness though, when it comes to story talk, it could be possible real development transpires in the only sequel Shadow Tower got, called Shadow Tower Abyss. For now though, I only wanted to focus on the first entry simply for time's sake, and it's just a shame the first doesn't have a true narrative to follow in-game. Which seems to be the case for most of these forgotten titles we talked about today. There's always an important piece or odd design choice that stops them from becoming a truly good or even great game. Obviously disregarding Castlevania Judgment and Sonic Fighters, since those are straightforward with what they are. Brink was stunted from being good due to the map and overall game design not catering to what was advertised, alongside barely having any content. Tag Team Racing was brought in the wrong direction for how it was designed. At least to me, they really should have focused on making the game about car combat only. Death by Degrees needed a better fighting system that had more depth or expression, so you weren't just jerking off the analog stick the whole time. Of course, on paper, these changes are simple and easy to point out, but in practice, they're a lot more difficult than people give them credit for, undoubtedly. Nevertheless, these games are all curious pieces of history for the ones that didn't know about their existence. Surely some out there knew all of them, or doesn't see certain titles as forgotten, but not everyone is chronically online and knows every nuance of a franchise. If you ask the person about these franchises or companies, more often than not, none of these games would be mentioned as a first, second, or even third thought. As always, make sure to leave your thoughts on these titles in the comments below. Do you have memories playing them? Are they the greatest games to be released throughout the respective companies or franchises' history? Did you finish to the Gunner bait in Castlevania Judgment more than 10 times? Big ups to our channel members who take the extra step to support the channel, going above and beyond. If you want to join them and get early access to content, hit the join button right next to the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, take very good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again in the next video.